Most people think Microsoft conquered the world with genius, but the truth is, it began with someone else's mistake. In the 1970s, IBM wasn't just a company. It was the empire of computing, a global giant so powerful that governments feared it. It built machines that filled entire rooms, controlled the flow of information, and powered everything from banks to NASA. IBM didn't compete. It dominated. And yet, within a decade, that same company would make a single decision so blind, so arrogant, that it would hand the future of computing to a pair of college dropouts. This is the story of how IBM missed the personal computer revolution and accidentally created Microsoft. By the end, you'll see why the fall of every empire begins the same way, not with failure, but with success too big to question. In the 1960s and 70s, IBM was untouchable. Its computers, massive mainframes costing millions, ran the world's biggest corporations. Every serious business depended on IBM hardware, IBM software, and IBM service contracts. Its salesmen wore blue suits and white shirts, disciplined, loyal, and feared. Inside IBM, culture was everything. Caution ruled. Nothing changed unless it was proven. But something strange was happening outside IBM's walls. In garages, basements, and college dorms, a new generation of dreamers was building something smaller and far more personal. They weren't engineers from corporate labs. They were hobbyists with wild ideas. In 1975, a new magazine called Popular Electronics featured a machine called the Altair 8800. It wasn't pretty, a box of switches and lights, but it was the first affordable computer for individuals, and it sparked a revolution. Among those who saw the article were two young men in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Bill Gates and Paul Allen. They realized something IBM didn't. Computers were about to leave the office and enter the home. Gates and Allen didn't have money, factories, or influence, but they had vision. They wrote a programming language called BASIC for the Altair. It was simple, fast, and made computing accessible to non-engineers. Within months, they founded a tiny company, Microsoft. Their goal wasn't to build computers. It was to build the software that made computers useful. Meanwhile, IBM's executives weren't paying attention. The idea of a personal computer seemed absurd to them. Who would want a computer at home? IBM's clients were banks, governments, corporations, not hobbyists. So, while the future was being invented in garages, IBM's boardroom stayed silent, until one day, they realized they were about to be left behind. By 1979, the world was changing fast. Apple had released the Apple II, a sleek personal computer that was selling by the hundreds of thousands. Schools were buying them. Startups were using them. IBM's clients were asking questions. Suddenly, the world's biggest computer company looked slow. Inside IBM's headquarters in Armonk, New York, panic spread. A secret task force was formed, Project Chess, to build a personal computer before it was too late. But there was a problem. IBM's bureaucracy moved like a glacier. It could take years to approve even a small product. They needed something fast outside the system. So, they made a shocking decision. They would build the PC using other people's technology. That single choice would change history. When IBM decided to build a personal computer, it faced an impossible deadline. The project had to move fast, something IBM had never done before. So they broke their own rules. Instead of building everything in-house, they began buying technology from outsiders. They sourced the processor from Intel, the monitor from third-party suppliers, and for the operating system, the heart of the computer, they needed someone to make it. At first, IBM turned to a small company in Seattle called Digital Research, run by a man named Gary Kildall. He had created the world's first popular PC operating system, CP divided by M. It was stable, powerful, and already widely used. But fate, as it often does in business, turned on a single meeting. In 1980, IBM executives flew to California to meet Kildall. They arrived at Digital Research's office, suits, briefcases, NDAs in hand. But Gary wasn't there. Depending on who tells the story, he was either out flying his private plane or simply unwilling to sign IBM's strict confidentiality agreement. Whatever the reason, the deal stalled. IBM's executives were frustrated. They couldn't wait. They needed an operating system now. Someone suggested a young company up in Seattle that had written BASIC for the Altair. Its name was Microsoft. When IBM met Bill Gates, he was just 24 years old. Polite, brilliant, and already known for his intensity. But Microsoft didn't actually have an operating system to sell. Still, Gates didn't hesitate. He told IBM, "Yes, we can provide one." Then he went out to find it. Microsoft quickly located a small program called QDOS, short for Quick and Dirty Operating System, created by another local developer. Gates bought the rights for $50,000, modified it, and renamed it MS-DOS. When IBM returned, Microsoft delivered. IBM called it PC-DOS, but Gates made sure to keep something crucial: the license. The contract allowed Microsoft to sell MS-DOS to other manufacturers. In IBM's eyes, that clause didn't matter. They were IBM. They believed their hardware would always dominate. They were wrong. In August 1981, the IBM personal computer launched. It was powerful, reliable, and most importantly carried the IBM name. It became an instant success. Businesses trusted it. Consumers wanted it. The phrase IBM compatible became a global standard. But as demand exploded, something unexpected happened. Other companies, Compaq, Dell, and dozens more, began building their own versions of the IBM PC, using the same Intel chips and Microsoft software. IBM had accidentally created an open ecosystem, one it couldn't control. Every clone sold meant more royalties for Microsoft, not IBM. While IBM made hardware profits once, Microsoft made software profits forever. By 1983, IBM had sold more than 2 million personal computers. But behind the numbers, control was slipping away. Customers didn't care whose machine they bought as long as it ran Microsoft's DOS. That was the moment everything flipped. IBM, the titan of hardware, had unknowingly turned Microsoft into the operating system of the world, and Bill Gates knew exactly what that meant. He had just created the most scalable business model in history, a product that cost nothing to reproduce, but could be sold to everyone. IBM had power. Microsoft had leverage, and leverage always wins. At first, IBM didn't notice it was losing control. Sales were booming. The IBM PC was the most popular computer on the planet. Its logo stood for power, prestige, and perfection. But beneath the surface, the foundation was shifting. The profit wasn't in the hardware anymore, it was in the software. And IBM didn't own it. Every time a new computer booted up, a message flashed across the screen. MS-DOS. Customers didn't care whose machine it was, as long as it ran Microsoft's system. And every sale, every copy, every disk meant one thing. Bill Gates was getting richer, and IBM was losing influence. By the mid-1980s, clones were everywhere. IBM tried to fight back with lawsuits, new designs, and proprietary components, but it was too late. The standard had already escaped their grasp. IBM had built the roads, but Microsoft owned the map. While IBM was struggling to hold its hardware kingdom together, Microsoft was building an invisible empire, one made of code, not metal. In 1985, Gates took his next leap. A new graphical interface called Windows. It turned the cold black screen of DOS into something human, colorful, intuitive, and open to everyone. Windows wasn't just software. It was a platform, the foundation on which the modern world would be built. And it worked on any PC, not just IBM's. That's when IBM finally realized what it had done. It had handed the keys of the future to someone else for free. In 1990, Microsoft released Windows 3, and the world changed overnight. IBM's hardware sales were collapsing. Microsoft's revenues were exploding. By 1995, IBM's dominance was gone, and the once tiny software vendor was now the most powerful company on earth. The student had surpassed the master. The irony couldn't be deeper. IBM had built the personal computer, the machine that was supposed to secure its future. But in doing so, it accidentally created the conditions for its own downfall. It had been too big to see the threat coming, too confident to imagine losing control, and too slow to adapt when the world changed. Microsoft, meanwhile, had done the opposite. It stayed small, agile, and hungry. It didn't try to own everything, just the layer that mattered most, the operating system that ran everything else. That single layer, invisible to most users, became the foundation of digital life, and IBM's mistake became Microsoft's miracle. By the late 1990s, Microsoft was the new empire, commanding over 90% of the world's computers. It dictated the future of software, crushed competitors, and turned Bill Gates into the world's richest man. But just like IBM decades earlier, Microsoft too began to slow down. It grew large, bureaucratic, cautious, and somewhere in California, another small company started by two college students in a garage was quietly preparing to disrupt it. That company's name was Google. The pattern had begun again, because history doesn't repeat by accident, it repeats by design. Every empire creates the tools of its own destruction. Every success plants the seed of complacency. IBM gave birth to Microsoft. Microsoft enabled the internet, and the internet gave rise to everything that came next: Google, Apple, Amazon, and beyond. So what's the real lesson? It's not that IBM made a mistake, it's that it stopped learning. It believed the future would look like the past. It built walls when it needed bridges, and it protected the present instead of preparing for change. Innovation doesn't destroy companies. Inertia does. The greatest danger to success isn't failure, it's certainty. IBM was certain it was untouchable. Microsoft was certain it had more time. And both discovered that technology moves faster than belief. Look around today, and the same story is still unfolding. Tech giants dominate headlines, control attention, and shape economies just like IBM once did. But the wheel always turns. Somewhere right now, a new idea is being written by someone who doesn't yet realize it will change everything. And when it does, today's titans will look just like IBM, too big to see, too slow to move. Because in every age, the real revolutionaries aren't the ones with power. They're the ones with perspective. IBM missed the future because it thought it could own it. Microsoft captured it because it understood that software, not hardware, was destiny. But the next empire will fall for the same reason. Not because it didn't have innovation, but because it had too much confidence in what it already knew. And that's how IBM missed the future and gave birth to Microsoft.